So on Tuesday, Ubisoft finally revealed what we are going to be getting up to in the next DLC expansion for Assassinins Creed Odyssey, which is titled The Fate of Atlantis. My name is Sykes and welcome to InstallationX, and today we're going to do a deep dive into what we can expect to be doing in the Fate of Atlantis DLC, and we're doing it right now. So what we're going to do for this video, guys, we're basically going to take the initial reveal trailer that Ubisoft released this week, and we're going to break it down into all these scenes that I think are relevant and worth talking about to try and figure out if there's any clues on what we're actually going to be doing in the DLC. It doesn't give much away, but it also reveals quite a lot, which is quite fun. I'm a massive Assassin's Creed fan, and I also studied classics at school, so all the Greek and Roman stuff is really appealing to me, so I'm really looking forward to this DLC, and I'm going to talk about why, and we're going to get into it, so let's go. So the first shot we see, it's actually Alexius in this shot, and he is on some form of canoe or kayak, and he's going along a river, and it seems that there's going to be potentially some strong links to the underworld in this one, so I was wondering whether he'd potentially be actually, you know, moving across the river Styx, which is quite a famous crossing for the underworld from the Greek world. So that's an interesting point. We then move on to the next shot, which is then potentially a mystery Isu or goddess. Now it seems that Assassin's Creed, or it seems that Ubisoft are going to be leaning in quite heavily with the initial Isu lore, which is within Assassin's Creed, and linking that quite heavily to the Greek myths. And initially when I saw this picture of this goddess, I thought, oh, it's Athene. Athene is obviously the goddess of wisdom, she's goddess of battle strategy, she's one of Zeus's favourite daughters, she's a very strong, powerful character. But then when I actually looked at it, there wasn't really much resemblance to Athene in the shot, apart from her helmet or her face guard. And then I started thinking about it, and with the links to the underworld that's quite heavy throughout the trailer, I think this is actually Persephone. Now, Persephone is the daughter of Zeus and Demeter, and she's actually the wife of Hades. And the myth behind Persephone is that Hades actually abducted her from the human world, the Greek world, from the gods, from Olympus. And actually, he took her down to the underworld, and Demeter was so grieved over the fact that her daughter, her favourite daughter, her only daughter, had been taken from her, that she mourned for 6 months of the year, which then related to how we get autumn and winter. And then when she comes back from the underworld, because she spends half the year in the underworld, half the year in the world above, they then get spring and summer. So I'm wondering if there's going to be any links to that in the DLC. I don't think they're going to dive that deep into the Greek myths, but it's potential. We then see a big shot of Elysium. Now Elysium, or the Fields of Elysium if you might have heard, this is the paradise for heroes. This is where heroes, or those favoured by the gods, go when they have died. They are made immortal, and in the Greek myths they're allowed to take all their cool stuff and they can basically live there forever in paradise. And some special heroes are actually allowed to become back again or be reborn, but I don't think we're going to be getting into that much. But it seems like a very picturesque, very incredibly looking shot, and it also opens up the game to potentially a whole new entire world that we're going to get to discover and explore, which is really exciting. We then get to more of a dark, grim shot, and I think this is actually Tartarus, or the gates of Tartarus. Now Tartarus, for those people who don't know, Tartarus is actually the deepest part, the worst, most awful part of the underworld. If you are just the worst person imaginable, you know, you've committed all sorts of crimes, you've murdered people in your own family, that was really bad for the Greeks, then you are sent to Tartarus and you are basically tortured for an eternity. So I'm wondering if that could potentially be this. We then get another shot of who I think is actually Cassandra with Aletheia. Now Aletheia is an Isu that has a running thread throughout the whole of the main Odyssey game. If you haven't come across her yet, I won't spoil it for you because she's actually really cool. But I think this is actually Cassandra. I initially thought it might actually be Layla Hassan in the present day, but I think based on the picture, I think it's actually Cassandra because she seems to be in her like kind of skirt and greaves more than anything. So interesting to see what that's going to be. That probably is going to be right at the start of the DLC before we actually get into the deep dive of going into Atlantis. We then get a shot of a very interesting character who I initially thought might be Ares, but then when I started thinking about it and watched through the trailer a couple of times, this is actually Hades. Now obviously Hades, a lot of people know who he is. He is the god of the underworld. He controls the underworld. Really interesting shot of him. He's going to be quite present, it seems, in a big way in the DLC. And then we get a look of Poseidon. Now initially when I first saw this I thought, oh, it's Zeus, but then I looked a bit harder and saw that actually he's holding something, and I believe it's actually the trident, so I think this is Poseidon. And we don't really see much of Poseidon anywhere else in the trailer, as we're going to get to in a minute, so it's going to be interesting to see what part he plays. Persephone and Hades, or at least who I think are Persephone and Hades, they keep coming back more frequently than Poseidon, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens with him. I could be wrong, it could be Zeus, but I'm thinking based on his look, the fact that he's got a grey beard, the fact that he's holding some kind of staff, might be his trident, so I think this is Poseidon. We then get a look of potentially Persephone and Cassandra side by side, maybe working together. But what is really interesting is that Persephone then says a line that says some gates should not be opened, which might be referring to the fact that Cassandra shouldn't have opened Atlantis, she shouldn't be there in the first place, and there might actually be some consequences linked to that. We then get a really cool shot of Cassandra in her new armour, which we're probably going to get at some point in the game, and she's also finally wielding the staff of Hermes Trismegistus, and what that actually involves. It seems that there's going to be a strong relationship between Cassandra and the staff, or the hero and the staff if you play as Alexius, in this DLC, so that's going to be interesting to see what happens there. We then get some kind of dialogue in this shot with Hades, and Hades actually mutters the line, "I know what you have done, and I'd say you owe me." So it looks at some point Cassandra is going to have to be doing some kind of bidding of Hades because she's maybe pissed him off, or something along those lines. It looks like there's going to be some form of conflict between these two, and which way that shapes up, we don't know. Whether this is going to benefit Cassandra or be a real issue for her is yet to be seen. We then get to see some new enemy factions, and then a couple of shots later on, we then see Persephone actually bringing those new enemies to life, showing off her powers. We see Alexios in this shot fighting alongside other mortals. Now what's interesting is, who are they? Are we in the Greek world again? Have these new enemies invaded the Greek world? Are we still in the underworld? Are these fallen heroes? Who knows, but these guys look pretty mortal to me. We then get to see Alexios in this case use the staff of Hermes Trismegistus in action, him actually using it as a weapon, which is looking really, really cool. We then get to see Persephone actually using her powers physically against Cassandra, instead of using the enemies to fight against her or Alexios. We're actually getting her to see physically using her powers. Now this is a really interesting shot because earlier on in the trailer, we actually saw the two of them standing side by side, and now the two of them seem to be fighting or having some kind of conflict. So interesting how that's going to go. We then get, in my opinion, the absolute money shot from this trailer, and this seems to be Cerberus, so obviously who's the mythological three-headed dog of the underworld. Really cool this, and it seems to be we're going to get some kind of new mythical beast encounter, just like we had with some of the mythical beasts in the main game. Again, I won't spoil them in case you haven't got to them, but they are really, really cool in the main game, so the fact we get to a new one is fantastic. We then get another shot of the Elysium fields. This one looks absolutely stunning and shows how much to the extent that Ubisoft have put into this DLC. This is really starting to look like an entire new game, which is absolutely fantastic. It's everything you want. I think the last time I played any kind of DLC anywhere near this scale, or at least perceived on this scale, is probably The Witcher 3 when they did the Blood and Wine expansion. This is looking like a whole new game, so it's really, really good and really happy about it so far. And then finally we get to the real big glamorous shot, which seems to be Atlantis. Now what is really interesting is it looks at the moment we're going to be spending a lot of time in some areas of the underworld, or what the Greeks perceive as the underworld. It might not actually be the underworld, it's just the Greeks' perception of that. And we seem to be Elysium, maybe Tartarus. Then how Atlantis actually physically links into all that is going to be super interesting. I don't know how it's actually going to work out, but it seems that this is the pinnacle of Isu culture, and the most Isu-related culture we've ever seen in any game so far. So yeah, that's what I think about all that. Well guys, that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, this is all just speculation, it's all my subjective opinion, it's what I've interpreted from what I saw on the trailer. So if you disagree with me or agree with me, then please talk about it in the comments below. I will be down there to have discussions with people. Some people might have some different ideas to me, which is awesome, so that'd be great to hear from you. I did head over to Ubisoft.com, or the Assassin's Creed section of Ubisoft.com, and found out the 3 titles for the episode are actually episode 1, which is releasing on the 23rd of April, is called The Fields of Elysium, which is interesting, links back into what I said. The episode 2 is actually called The Torment of Hades, so that's going to bring Hades into play and confirms that that character is actually Hades. And the final episode, which is going to launch in July, is actually the Judgment of Atlantis. So that's going to bring into play what Atlantis actually is, how it's going to work, and what's going to eventually end up to it. Obviously, the myth of Atlantis is the fact that it disappeared altogether. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. Again, if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like. Please head over to InstallationX and give us a subscribe and support the channel. That means a massive amount to me. Again, leave your comments down below. I'm willing to have a chat to people. Please try and share the video around to get some recognition for the channel, gain some support. And in the meantime, I've been Sykes, and for everything Xbox, stay tuned to InstallationX. Bye, guys.